friend.
Hello, Julie. That feels so lovely, the sound of your bowl.
Yeah, this beautiful bowl just was calling to be played for you today. Yeah, it's even really warm, which is surprising because it's very cold here in the
Mm,
mountains.
lovely. It's here
Colder
to
out.
warm us.
So, I'm feeling a little bit like heavy energy, and I thought it might be nice for us to just to do a little time out right before we begin to do a little tuning in. So I thought I'd lead
Mm.
us in just a bit of a you know, mindful opening before we begin. How does that sound?
Oh, that sounds lovely, Julie.
So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, rest your hands comfortably where you're sitting, and plant those feet so that they feel very anchored to Mother Earth. And we're going to turn our attention to our breath with a nice, long, slow, deep breath in through the nose. And exhale. And if it feels good, just sigh that breath out. One more nice, long, slow, deep breath in. And exhale. And a third deep breath in. And exhale. Nothing to do here. You've already arrived. Just tuning our attention inward. This is a time to sort of consider, you know, what is it that you are putting your attention towards these days? Is there something in particular that keeps coming up for you in your thoughts? Things you're speaking about to yourself or to others? Are you feeling called to creativity, the need to make things? Maybe you're feeling a little stuck. Simply be with what you are pondering these days. What's working on you? What's being called forth in you? Are you finding hope? Are you missing hope? Are you feeling light? Are you longing for light? Are you feeling all things are possible? How about joy? What does joy factor into your life these days? We're deep into the season of Advent and Hanukkah, and we'll soon be welcoming the winter solstice. All of these times of reflection, celebration, have light as part of this celebratory experience. The Advent wreath, the Hanukkah menorah, the Yule log fire of solstice. ancient and current celebrations that remind us about hope and possibility and joy, and that we are the light. We bring the light. Human beings have the potential to be the light in the world. In these seasons that we head into where the days are darker, this is the reminder to be the light. When you feel ready, open your eyes.
Julie, that was delicious. Thank you for that gift.
My pleasure.
I just so happen to have a poem by Judy Brown about bringing light and space to this season. On the surface, it might sound like a poem about how to start a fire, but truly it is an instruction manual for creating space during this time. And although she wrote this several years ago, it feels so spot on for the energy that we're in right now between the new moon eclipse on the 14th and heading into winter solstice. And there's a lot of heavy energy moving through, and just the feeling of creating space for it to move through so we're open to receive what's on the other side. So this is Fire by Judy Brown. What makes a fire burn is space between the logs. What makes a fire burn is space between the logs, a breathing space. Too much of a good thing, too many logs, packed too tight, can douse the flames almost as surely as a pail of water would. So building fires requires attention to the spaces in between as much as to the wood. When we're able to build open spaces in the same way we have learned to pile on the logs, then we can come to see how it is fuel and absence of the fuel together that make fire possible. When we are able to build open spaces in the same way we have learned to pile on logs, then we can come to see how it is fuel and the absence of fuel together that make fire possible. We only need to lay a log lightly from time to time. A fire grows simply because the space is there, with openings in which the flame that knows just how it wants to burn can find its way. What makes a fire burn is space between the logs, a breathing space. We only need to lay a log lightly from time to time. A fire grows simply because the space is there. space.
That was beautiful. And some key things that jumped out at me is the idea of too much of a good thing. Sort of feel like collectively our world is coming down from some massive sugar high of too much in our circuitry, too much. More is better, faster is better, accumulate more, get the bigger house. Like, and too much of a good thing has collapsed for so many of us.
Right.
It's such a natural disaster.
One log is good. Imagine what 5 logs will be.
Exactly.
There isn't space when there's too many.
And you're right. You know, when you build a fire, there is a real art to creating edges that have open spaces so the air can get in there. And
Mhm.
you know, you can't overstuff and you can't shortcut trying to get it done faster, you know?
You know, one of the favorite shows that the Johnsons we've enjoyed watching since we've known each other is Survivor, the show Survivor.
Right.
And their tiebreaker is building fire. And although they give them the tools to build fire, it really is finding just the amount of kindling, just the amount of wood. And it makes me think of when it's a tiebreaker. So there's a lot of anxious energy into who's going to build the biggest fire fastest. And so the tendency, let's pile on, pile on, pile on. And it's always the person who piled on too much wood, they don't get a fire going. It ignites and then it goes out again because there wasn't enough breathing air or enough breathing space. So yeah, I feel a little bit more spacious just having read the poem. And this time of year, you know, can feel like there's so much to do that we pile on our plate and pile on our plate. And then there isn't space to enjoy other people's company or to enjoy the meal or the desserts. So that's one thing that this pandemic has helped with our family is the shedding of so many things that we used to think were important. And now that we can't gather in so many places with so many people or do so many things, you know, the shedding and creating space for us to really see what's there underneath everything, what's there, and what's there is what matters. You want to know a little bit about Judy Brown?
Yeah, I'd love to know more about her and how you found her.
Well, she is a poet after her own heart, as she seems to follow, you know, some of the pathways of David White and Parker Palmer and some of the other poets that we've been talking about. She is a Quaker who is interested in organizational processes which incorporate reflection and inquiry. As a writer and a poet, she's intrigued by the power of language and the metaphor to shift our thinking and open us to new perspectives. As an executive, she's interested in how leaders sustain energy and a sense of purpose and direction. And as a scientist, she's interested in understanding more fully how it is that we experience openings into greater awareness and how those experiences allow us to gather our energies in powerful ways.
Wow. So she is multifaceted.
She is an educator, a speaker, a facilitator, a poet, a writer. She has a PhD from Michigan State University. She served as a White House Fellow, a special assistant to the US Secretary, as Chief Financial Officer, Assistant Dean, and Director of Executive Programs at the College of Business and Management at the University of Maryland. She's been Vice President of Seminars and Cooperative Programs at the Aspen Institute, just to name a few ways that she shares this way of moving through the world, this way of being in reflection and inquiry. And I love this idea of bringing that to the corporate world.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I read something a while ago that talked about good leaders in the corporate world need to become good listeners. Right. And that struck me, having, worked in corporate America for almost 30 years, of just recognizing the best leaders that I ever worked for knew how to just be quiet and stay back and listen and take it in and and sometimes you would think that they weren't really engaged,
Mm-hmm.
but those were the people who could come back to you the next day or even at your next one-on-one meeting and say, I've had some time to think about this.
Right.
Those were usually my favorite people to work for.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't just throwing stuff up on the wall to see what sticks. Mm-hmm. It was, let's be thoughtful and intentional about this. Come up with the best option.
Right.
And yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also heard a little bit of one of my new old favorites, Clarice Short, and The Wild One in the Wind, because she is from the Midwest and she does bring in nature into her poetry. And, I felt Clarice Short when I was doing some research with Judy Brown and just finding out all these facets of her. Of being a Quaker who moves in the business world, who moves in the poetry world, the writing world, corporate world, in the government world. Just imagine, we've had these conversations. Imagine, if every corporate meeting or government meeting started with poetry to bring us to ground, to bring us to center, and remind us all that we have in common with each other before we start the negotiations. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you imagine bringing your bowl into a board meeting and saying, before we get started, let's just go ahead and you kind of clear the energy.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to connect your hand to your heart.
Can you imagine what a world this would be?
It's the kind of world I want to live in, let me tell you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And have you ever been to a Quaker quiet ceremony at a church gathering for the Quakers?
I haven't been in person, but I've been curious because I know of them. I know of these circles and gatherings, and I'm kind of fascinated with the idea of sitting in the stillness and speaking when you feel called to speak. And if you sit in silence for the hour, that's what everybody's called to do. It feels so lovely to me. Have you been?
Have. And, I went, I would say when I was in college and I was really starting to become more of a seeker about, I know how I was raised in the religion of my family, but what else is there that I should know about? Or,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I was just curious about. And the first service I went to, it was quiet for like the first 20 minutes maybe, and there's nobody leading the congregation.
Mhm.
We're all just sitting in pews facing forward, nothing decorative to even really look at, so you can't even lose yourself like you could in a beautiful cathedral, whatever. And after about 20 minutes, a man who was several pews ahead of me just stood and started talking about losing his brother who had been in some sort of farming accident. And he just was talking to spirit, to the void, just talking. And nobody came up and, like, patted him when he got very emotional, or it was just, it, it was profound. It was really powerful because it was like the unanswerable questions being posed, but just by posing them, they were sort of transfigured, they were sort of healed, they went into the void, and they just sort of, I don't know. I would love to know from his perspective what that experience was for him. I know what it was for me.
Mhm.
It made my own grief and sadness come up and sort of get left there. It was the unifying, that was the unifying experience. It was beautiful.
And this is my sense in reading some of the works of Parker Palmer, and bringing some of his writing into some of the work I do is, the sitting in silence, um, without the interruption, so that your feelings aren't cut off because someone wants to offer you support, right? And so this truly deeply tapping in to your own inner wisdom, and hearing that, but also at the same time, those who are listening without interrupting are tapping into their wisdom as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, thank you for being in this space with me today, Julie. Thank you for guiding us in just a lovely journey into coming to ground.
Yeah, my pleasure. And the energy does feel lighter, and
Mhm.
good to have a good friend to share that with. So thank you.
Mhm. Mm. Well, all right, my friend. Um, Happy, lovely winter solstice to you. I hope that you get out. I think it's about 45 minutes after sunset, wherever you are, to look up and see this bright star that is the two planets aligning with each other.
That's right. That's a powerful remember. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, this is an 800-year opportunity. This planetary sort of Bethlehem star, beautiful
Yes,
opportunity to see
800 years.
what that light could be like. So,
Yes. And with this solstice, we are moving from earth energy to air energy, and we've been in earth energy since 1802.
mhm.
So I feel like it's kind of cool that we're alive as we're moving into
It's
another kind.
difficulty to be in a transition point planetarily and as a human being living it,
Yeah.
but it's really exciting that we are truly heading into the Aquarius. You
Yeah.
know, it isn't just a great 60s song.
But to
Yeah.
be here when these two planets are aligning for the first time in 800 years, to be living when we're moving from Earth energy to air energy since 1802, what an amazing time to be here. And I think it's reflected in everything we've been experiencing this year. So I'm excited for 2021.
Well, until next time, my friend, be well. And I'll look forward to hearing how you brought in the winter solstice.
You as well. I'll see you.
All right. Take care.